recording this, and I'll just post it on YouTube without any editing.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
so if you need to hear the critique again, it's there.
Oh, great.
Okay. I have you just tell me when you want the slideshow, because I know you're going to want to talk.
So basically, what we're going to do is I'll go through the artwork, and I'll be talking to the person that the artwork is done by, and they're the only ones that should be talking or asking questions. But I would like you to maybe form questions at the end of this critique that you may have. And if you want to see any particular technique, I could do that for you also. Bless you. Um, so why don't we get started, and I'll have my wife start the uh, slideshow for the artwork so I can start critiquing. So,
I'm
excuse me
back.
1 minute.
I'm back. Okay. It's not the one I
You decided that I was supposed to get it up.
I did tons of stuff and I've been quiet since 9 o'clock. I heard you get up from.
Let me close these windows for you. Okay. Let me hit this.
Okay. Anne, are you with us?
Yes. I
Okay.
wish you would take your glasses off. It's much better without your glasses on.
Oh, you can't see. You can't see. You're funny.
I look thinner without my glasses on too.
Yeah.
Anyways, starting off with the center part here, you have too much open area. You could have brought the boughs of the pines in a little bit more, and showed a few more of the trunks of the trees within the pines, and vary your greens and blue greens a little bit more that are up in the trees there. But way in the background, which is hard to do sometimes, is to get more subtle handling of the trees that were in that foggy area. But now the rest of it, you did fairly well. I like the way that you handled the foreground. You got the what I call a spring runoff creek moving quite well. You could have tried to get the back part of the creek a little bit narrower, and reflect some of the color that is up above it into the creek just a little bit. But most of all, the biggest thing that is bothersome is that the middle area
Yeah.
in
I
the
fought with
background
that.
is not it's too large. You needed to kind of bring the boughs of the pines in to make the eye move a little bit, because right now it looks like you got field goals going on.
Exactly. I fought with that, fought with that. It's actually, I don't like your indigo paper. I'm sorry. I tried very hard on it, but when I got to fixing the middle of the paper, it was just, I was wrecking the paper.
Okay, that it takes a while to get used to it. Was it 300 pound or 140 pound?
It was 140.
Okay, the 140 pound is more fragile than the 300 pound. I will tell you that.
Okay.
But just to give you an idea, the first time that I used the paper, and my wife had ordered it for me when we were coming back from Wisconsin. She says, "Do you ever work on indigo paper before?" And I said, "No." She says, "Well, you will be." She ordered some, and I decided to use it in my studio with my studio students one night to to do a demonstration, and I usually used Arches or Fabriano before that, and I was going to lift very vigorously with my oil painting brush, and I poked a hole right through the paper. And I didn't realize how soft the paper was. But once I got used to it, you can manipulate the watercolor a little bit nicer. And my understanding, Arches has changed their paper a little bit, and I'm not sure. I haven't used Arches in a while, but I'm not sure what they did to it. They're always doing something that they shouldn't do to cheapen something, but you always have to use that idea that there is a learning curve on any new paper on how the watercolor reacts to it. And just to give you an idea, some papers have more sizing on them than other papers, which allows you to, it's like an invisible glue. It allows you to manipulate the watercolor just a little bit more than having watercolor paper that has very little or no sizing on it. You have sizing in the paper that holds the fibers together, but the like the watercolor blocks, I'm not a big fan of because they don't have a lot of sizing on the paper because they're shipping them in a block. Now and that sizing protects the paper, but the individual sheets of paper have more sizing on it. So yeah, it takes a little while to get used to it, and it can be aggravating, but I think you did a pretty good job. But also be conscious of every tree is a different color a little bit, or a different temperature, or has a different value to it. So because your trees in the background on the left are as dark as your trees in the foreground on the right, and darks get lighter as they recede. And your trees in the background are further back in your painting than they are in the one that I did. But I think that you did fairly well with this.
I was one of the things that troubled me, and I don't know. I know that it didn't happen in your composition, but I knew I was doing the double pillar composition, and it seemed like everything, like the stream was right in the middle, and then I had the two groups of trees on each side, and I know you had varied them so well, and I struggled with that.
Yeah, my stream was in the middle ground area. I agree. I moved it a little bit to the left, but not a lot. Yours is a little bit to the left, but what I'm looking at when I do something like that is what do I have to do to throw that off, balance it differently, and many times that can be done by value, because contrast of value will attract the eye. In other words, your lightest lights and your darkest darks. And if you don't have your darks dark enough, which you do, your lights will never seem light enough.
Okay.
But I did play with the value pattern, making sure that the right-hand side of the painting, the large darks, did not equal the large darks on the left side. And you have them kind of equal.
Yeah.
And it's a matter of talking to yourself. I do that a lot down here. My wife laughs. But I do talk to myself down here about what I'm doing. And I think one of the most important things during the painting is to stand up, step back from your painting to see what you need to do next. The first one or two things, and then do that and step back again. That way it gives you a different perspective.
I think I'm going to try this again, and I'm going to try it on Yupo.
I've never worked on Yupo. You cannot. I know you cannot layer your paint on Yupo.
Right. But it's kind of interesting the effects you get, a real watery effect.
Yes, you do. Everything that I've seen, but there is no layering. Everything is put down in a very well planned manner in the first and second layer, and that's it. To me, it's like painting on my car windshield. It's too slick.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go to your next one. All right, this is your first try or second?
Oh, this was the one I did. This is on arches. And I
Okay,
did this when you were giving the demonstration. I painted with you.
okay. Actually, compositionally, this one is better. Um,
Yeah.
well, there's give and take on both things. It's better in the fact that you got your darks dark enough, but again, they're too equal. I'm always being conscious of what's in the foreground, what's in the midground, what's in the background. Um, it's more of a complete painting than your first one that we looked at, but your darks are all the same. And you have to vary the darks as far as values go, as far as temperature goes, and as far as the color goes. So you need to create more variety, which is the spice of our artist life. Variety of color, temperature, value, and intensity. But I think that this one holds together better, but your darks are all too equal. But I like the way you handled it. You got different colors in the trees. You've got a better, stronger background that's coming forward a little bit more. But the dark stripes that are in the foreground could have changed a little bit more.
I think that this shows that painting with you is totally different than painting on your own.
Yes, and it's kind of fun to watch other watercolorists paint for the fact that every watercolorist or oil painter, they start their painting differently. They have different thoughts on which way they want to take it. And it's nice to watch somebody else just to get a different idea. I have been watching for the last few years Russian oil painters, and they have a different color palette. They have a different approach a little bit, but it is all very intuitive to them to follow what has been done by the masters before them. They've done a number of beautiful things. I've looked at Russian painters for about 4 or 5 years now, and they just paint these beautiful colors. So always take a look around at what other people are doing to get an idea. And if you pick up one idea, that's a good thing.
Thank you very much. That's very constructive, and I will try not to make a hole in my paper, but I will work on it.
Well, if I've done it, you can do it too. You can put a hole in your paper.
Yes, I don't care.
You know,
I paint on both sides.
not every one of my paintings are successes, and there's things that are some better than others. And what you have to do is evaluate: is there anything else I can do to make it better, or should I just stop and start over, or should I go on to another subject? But I never do the same subject twice in a row that often. I usually go on to a different subject because I find myself competing with myself previously, and I end up making some of the same mistakes I didn't want to do.
Ah, okay. Good
Linda Mary
advice.
came in.
Okay,
Everybody's
all right,
here.
good. Everybody's here now. Okay, Ann Johnson,
Same lady.
same lady.
No, this is not the one. I
Oh.
sent you the wrong one. It was the other one.
Is this
That
one?
one?
Yeah,
Okay, what paper were you working on here?
that's arches.
Okay. Um, what you have to remember, where did you get the reference? I have to ask you that.
I have taken a photograph on my river. I live on the river.
Okay. Um, this has a feeling of John Carlson's paintings from out east, which is a good thing.
Oh,
You know, just in case you have any doubt in your mind. Now, what you have to remember is that lights get darker as they go back. Now, in a snow scene, anything that's white, it could be people in white shirts and gowns and what have you, but anything that's white is cooler in the foreground, and it gets warmer as it goes back. So in the background, on the river bank way in the background, you needed to warm that up a little bit, because remember, lights come forward, and you needed to tone that
okay.
down so it's warmer and grayer on the snow in the background. Now, that's with anything that's white. Now, everything else goes from warmer to cooler. So it's like ships passing in the night. White goes from cool to warm, and everything else goes from warm to cool, which is kind of an odd thing, but with observation, you will begin to see that. Now, your light trees in the back here on the left-hand shore, they could have been a little bit more variety of value. You have some, they're all about the same value except for the one directly in the middle, which I would have moved that tree.
Okay.
You want to, remember, nature's very forgiving, and you can move the tree, you can cut the tree down, you can do anything you want. Nobody's going to know it. But I would have moved that tree out of the middle and more off to the left-hand side. The other thing that is always bothersome to the eye because it creates a tangent is that far tree off to the right is running tangent, even though that it falls out of the picture plane on the right, but it appears to be running tangent. And when we read a painting, it's left to right, and you want to keep the viewer moving around in the painting. So to correct this, you would move the tree in to the picture plane, allow a little air on the other side, and kind of lean it in a little bit more.
Ah, okay.
But
I almost took it out more. Okay.
yeah, you don't want to run things up the side like that because your eye will follow that up and out.
Ah, yeah.
Okay? The foreground could have had maybe some cast shadows in it to make it more interesting and less flat looking. But I do like the subject matter, but if you rearrange it and orchestrate it in a different manner, you really have something nice then because you kept your edges soft on the top of the trees. Your edges in the foreground are a little bit sharper, and the background, which has that nice warmer color that's grayed down, that's very nice. But those light trees needed to be toned down in different fashions, and that big white one moved out of the middle.
Ah, okay. Thank you.
I think you did fairly well, even though that you could have been more colorful on the left-hand shore and not so dark.
Ah,
Try to make your dark areas more colorful, just a little bit more, but semi-interesting. Never real interesting, but semi-interesting. Because
very color. Yeah.
that dark from and the following shore from the left-hand side, following back to that further shore back, it should have got lighter and cooler. And you have it almost the same value across, which creates a feeling of flat value.
Yeah.
But
Well, obviously, I need your help. Yes. Thank you very much.
I would revisit this painting again and reorchestrate some of the trees and get a better understanding that the values change as they go away from us or across in front of us or up from us or down from us. They can't stay the same.
Okay. The rose trees in the back were actually very brown in my, in looking out at the river, they'd turned very brown, and I wanted to give it a little color.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. There are probably oak trees still hanging
Yeah,
on to their
yeah.
leaves, which really makes an interesting winter composition color-wise. But I'm looking at what you've got here. You've got good bones to the painting. It just needs to be reorchestrated with the movement of a couple trees and the change of value more.
Thank you. I fought and fought with that, the bunch there on the little, the bunch that was close to us and the river that was behind it, and
Yes.
I couldn't make that work. It didn't.
Well, you can still make it work. Revisit that one. I think you got good bones in this one.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, we're going to go on to Robert Branton.
Oh, beautiful.
Nice job. What I'm always amazed at, even in my workshops and so forth, is that always telling the students, don't worry about if you don't come up with the same painting composition as I did. Yours is a little bit different, which is fine. I'm looking whether it works or it doesn't work. Um, but I could have 20 students in class and they come up with 20 different paintings. And this is different than what I put down because you have a little bit more air in it, which makes it work just as well.
Yeah.
I will caution you on some of your edges in the foreground on the creek. It's a little bit too sharp in all the way down the left or the right side of the creek. Allow to have lost and found edges. The eye will automatically follow that. You don't need to always describe every edge. But I like the background. It's totally different than what the photograph was telling you, but you don't have to paint the photograph. You don't want to paint the photograph. You want to paint your painting. And I think that you did fairly well with this.
What about the red in the background? I put some red in there.
That doesn't bother me at all because it's not that bright. It's not intense, and you have brought some of that color in a different form to the foreground a little bit, which you didn't put the color just in one place to isolate it. You always want to move color around a little bit more.
Right.
But I think that it works fine. It's not bothersome to the eye. What I do want you to be conscious of is that the big tree in the foreground has form to it.
That's
Then I
what-
have three of the other trees here that are the secondary large ones, the one next to it, and the two in the back on the left. You have them the same value and the same darkness. And I'd have to see the painting in person to see if there's a little bit more form in it because photographs always don't tell the story, of course. I like what you've got going with the blues in the background, but as the tree goes up and away from us, you want to try to, if it's receiving more light, allow it to be lighter, maybe even a little bit warmer. But it's something you want to create variety, which is one of my big things because we get hooked into, oh, this looks nice, and we use it everywhere. I did that on my first painting I did with rocks that I thought was successful. Stepped back, and every rock was the same size, same shape, and same color and texture. And I found something that worked, and I used it everywhere, which flattened everything out. But the only big thing that really bothers me, Bob, is that the lower left-hand corner is a little bit too busy with too many darks and lights. You could have simplified that, some of the rocks or whatever.
Where the rocks are, you mean?
Yeah, to tone it down so it becomes a little bit less busy. But I
Okay.
like what you did on the bank on the other side, creating the feeling of grasses and different textures. And it has a variety of things going on over there. I like the painting. It's pretty good.
Thank you.
All right, let's. You have any other questions before I go on?
Oh, that's fine.
Okay, we're gonna go to your next one. Hang on. Okay.
This one I did years ago.
The one thing that I'm always telling students is to keep your edges as soft as you can for as
Yeah.
long as you can, and only have a few pronounced edges. Every one of your trees are in focus.
Right.
They're all done the same. The background, excluding the trees, there's too many trees in the foreground, by the way. It gets very busy. But the background, the way that you handled all that softness and indicating a few trunks of smaller saplings and so forth, very nice. The way you handled the ferns in the lower right are nice, but what happens with the handling of ferns like that in the lower right, you're allowing the eye to fall out over there. My eye gets attracted over there because of contrast of value and detail. And it's very nice, but it's in the wrong place. But watch your trees have to have different value The ones in the background, you started toning down, but you could have toned down more of them.
Thank you.
But I think that for this being done a while back, I think it's pretty good. But your trees are too much the same.
Right, right.
Pretty good though.
I maybe get it out again and just do that.
Well, it's not. If you look at it or take, you have the photograph still.
No,
All right, make a sketch of this and reorchestrate the trees a little bit and simplify. Take some out, and then take the painting and put it about 10 feet away from you on the wall, so it's not close up, and
Right.
start it again.
okay. That sounds good.
That way, you're not staring at it too close.
Right, right.
Okie dokie.
Okay, we'll go on to the next folk here. Teresa, are you with us?
Yes, uh-huh.
Okay.
Good. I like her.
This is amazing on how different it is from the previous people. Um, this is very nice. The thing that I'm looking at here is that the plane of the ground going back on the right hand side is the same green going back, same intensity. And what it is doing is it's standing upright instead of falling down, laying flat. The colors you used were fine, but I would have softened it as it went back. The river or the creek or the spring runoff could have showed a little bit more of this color in there. But overall, I think you did very well. You have variety in the size of the trees and the color of the trees and the temperature. You only need to
Dale,
lift some.
Dale,
Yeah. Yes.
I'm gonna have to you may have to go on to somebody else. I've got technical difficulties and I just lost. I've got you guys over there, but I have no image. It says my Adobe Flash Player is,
Okay, we'll come back to you, Teresa.
Yeah, I'm
Just
so
give us a
sorry.
heads up.
okay, thank you.
No problem.
My apologies.
That's all right. We understand.
I may completely sign off here and then come back.
Okay.
Thank you.
Rose, are you with us? Anne?
I just unmuted. Yes, I'm with you. And I have to preface this, okay?
Go ahead.
I did not have the correct colors. And so I had to do a lot of
Improvising.
improvising, and I was
Yeah.
never happy. And
Okay.
when I see it right now, I'm looking at that horrible dark green blob on the left. That's disgusting.
Okay. Let's not get too harsh with yourself. You have a different image going on here. And how you can fix this is to take the toothbrush with a little bit of water on it, on that dark green area, and lay your painting flat and spritz a little bit of water on that. Let it sit there for about 15, 20 seconds, and then take a paper towel, press down, twist, and pull up, and you'll pull some air out of that. And it will get a texture to it. You have a different composition going on, which I think is a pretty good composition. The background is fine. It's very light. It's very loose. You have
I like it.
it's not as bad as you think, Anne. It's not bad as you think. I would take and lighten up a little bit of this lower right hand corner or soften it with a damp brush. Don't touch the lower left hand corner. But I think the biggest thing is what you're concerned about is that dark area that's above that in the left hand side. Sprinkle some water on there with a toothbrush and lift it. And I would not touch anything else.
Thank you.
That's how good I feel about the painting. And you don't need to touch anything else.
What color did she use?
I felt like I was in a wrestling match.
I've been there.
Yeah, there's sometimes, and I was not happy with the paper either, and it's 300-pound arches, but I just I did it was I don't know I was wrestling pretty hard with it.
What colors did you have to improvise with?
The green. The green is a Daniel Smith Caroline
Okay.
green, and I didn't have any cobalt. So I can't even remember what I used there. It may have been that magnesium. I don't know. But they're arriving today. I did not even give it a thought that I wouldn't have the proper colors. I just, it never occurred to me. I mean, cobalt is just, you always have cobalt, right? And when I got to rooting around in there an hour before we started, I was just aghast that I didn't have it. So anyway, they're arriving today.
Okay. I think you did fairly well with the colors that you used. It's, when I'm looking at the painting, I'm not looking at whether it compares to anybody else's or the photograph. I'm looking at it within its own frame of reference, and it is working quite well. It's just that you need to, like I said, spritz some water out the toothbrush on that dark blue and lip.
I will do that.
It'll make it a little bit more airy.
Thank you.
We're gonna go on to the next one.
So this is.
Okay, this is one of somebody-
Hang on for a minute.
Hold on, we're gonna mute everybody. Just a minute, I'm gonna mute everybody. And Anne, I want you to come, once I mute everybody, Anne, unmute yourself.
Okay, I've unmuted.
Okay, thank you.
Wow, that was
Okay, I think it's you that's doing the feedback.
Echoing.
Also, Teresa came back.
Okay.
Let's see if Anne's there anymore.
Anne, are you here?
I am.
Okay.
Okay, for some reason we had echo coming from.
No kidding.
Nasty feedback. It's like being in a
That was-
disco.
That was like, yeah, that was like my worst drug nightmare. Okay, so this painting I did was one of my very first when I started painting again.
Okay.
And there are compositional errors in this. I've talked to Bob Bratton about this painting, and I
Yeah.
really like the subject. And I'm thinking that with your help, I may paint it again. But I'm really anxious to hear what you have to say about it.
Okay. Two big things that bother me is that the trees in the foreground divide the composition directly in half.
That's exactly what Bob Bratton said.
Okay, so you never want to divide in half horizontally, vertically, or diagonally. The second thing is your barn is too big for the proportion of the paper size.
Oh.
You need to make it a little bit smaller, and it just encompasses everything is too large. You need to make it about, I would say, a quarter smaller at least.
Huh.
Sometimes you have things out of proportion with the size of the paper and so forth. And what happens is that it overtakes the composition. And it all depends on how you orchestrate it, because proportion has a lot to do with the relationship of size of objects within a given area, and it tells a story. The barn is overpowering, and I'm seeing the barn, and that's about it besides the trees in the foreground. You want your eye to be able to move around the composition a little bit easier. Also, the grayness of the barn could have had a little bit of warmth in it, because you have all those colors around it that should have been reflecting in the color of the barn a little bit, just a little bit, not a lot. I like the way that you handled the foliage around it. I even like the way that you handled the trees in the foreground. You gave them a variety of color and texture and temperature and so forth, but it's too busy. But yeah, the barn is too big. I'd make it a quarter size smaller. Are you still there?
I'm there. I'm listening and looking.
Okay.
And you
And
say the bottom part in front of the barn is too busy.
yeah, it's cut up by the trees, not necessarily by what you did in the ground area, but it's too busy. But also, when you make the barn smaller, keep it off to the left hand side a little bit more, so there's more air on the right hand side. It'll give the eye time enough to move around and come back to the barn, because you're basically in the entertainment business of having people view your painting, and you want to lead them where you want to, and have a journey through the painting. And when you have the barn that big, it's just a smack dab in the middle, and there's no place for the eye to move after that. But
Yeah.
the handling of the foliage in back of the barn off to both sides, that's very good. But
Thank you.
you want to move those trees out of the foreground and make the barn at least a quarter, if not a third, smaller, and then take some of the trees that you have in the foreground and move them off to the left or the right, but not down the middle, and simplify them.
So is that foreground too busy because of the small branches or because of the texture of the ground cover?
The foreground is too busy because of the trees and the branches,
Okay.
but the rest of it's not bad except for the size of the barn.
Okay. Never thought about that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
is that the way the photograph looked?
Oh yeah, I was pretty literal.
Okay.
I was on a bike ride, and this is up in Amish country,
Okay.
real in the very corner, northeast corner of the state.
Yeah.
And it's taken me a long time, and I still am not very good at it, but I tend to take a picture thinking of the composition and then paint that literally. And so I'm learning how to change my photograph. Uh,
Okay. Yeah, that, I mean, I talk about that constantly, about not being a slave to the photograph
yeah.
and learning how to manipulate things, which I talk about in my workshops and so forth. And I draw up the composition in front of the students so they can see what my thoughts are.
Yeah, well, that's a new level for me in
Yeah.
trying to manipulate.
Yeah, because
And
what I usually do when I'm dealing with something new is I do a pencil sketch, maybe 3 or 4 times variations of that to get an idea, and not jump into the pool too fast.
good idea.
But
I'm gonna
that's,
work on that. Thank you.
you're welcome.
Dale, this is Teresa, and I just wanted you to know I'm back.
I know my wife gave me the heads up.
Right, I'm gonna go back to, let's see,
We're going to go back to you, Teresa, here.
let's see. No, we don't want Denise. Sorry, Denise. And there we go.
Okay, there we go. All right, Teresa, we were talking about your painting here. Your color is too intense on that yellow green going back to the background. And the edges along that side, as an edge goes back away from us, soften a little bit. You have an edge up against the yellow green with the dark green that's next to it. Kind of soften that a little bit. But the rest of the painting is very good. A little bit more color in the creek, because the creek has to be, as it goes back away from, it's got to change 10% every so often so that the creek lays down. Right now it's standing vertically straight up, so you need to
It is.
tone
That
that down.
that was the thing that I thought I would rework. The back third of the creek is
Yeah.
very static.
Yeah, you want to tone that down so it's darker. Remember, lights get darker as they go back. And
And
then
maybe more
soften.
variation in the shape, do you think?
The shape is fine. The shape can take any form. It doesn't have to be like the photograph. Sometimes I will move a creek or a river or trees or whatever because they don't work that way. So I'll wind the creek in a different direction. There's nothing wrong with that. Nobody will know. But I like the rest of it. You did very well on it.
Well, we have pine trees in our yard, white pines like this. And
Yeah.
so when that one pine ended up being a little bit curved, I think it was a mistake, but I relate it to a pine tree that looks just like that
Yeah.
in my yard.
Oh yeah, pine trees can take a number of shapes depending on what kind of pine tree they are. We have jack pines that they planted up in northern Wisconsin after a forest fire at the turn of the last century, and they have the most gnarly looking shape. They bend a different direction. They have multiple stems off the trunk, and their pines can be very interesting, color wise and texture. But no, that doesn't bother me at all. That pine that curves a little bit. It gives a little bit nicer interest.
Okay.
Okay.
Let's go to your next painting.
Well, I have to explain this. I haven't done a landscape for 20 years. And so I have no secondary landscapes to send you.
That's fine. A painting is a painting. This is very nice. Do you know this person, or is this something from a photograph?
I do. I do know her. But it was done from a photograph.
Okay. Now, the biggest thing that I'm always telling students is to watch your edges. Now, let's start with the mask on the face. As we go down underneath the chin there with the mask, that could have been toned down more so the mask comes up and around and forms around her face just a little bit more.
Okay.
Even if it wasn't showing in the photograph, these are things that you really must do. You did the face really well. I really like that. But you could have been more suggestive on her hair as it comes down around her shoulders to the bottom of the composition. That way, the hair on her head and around her face will take precedent over the beautiful waves you put down below. So you don't need to put detail equally everywhere. Learn how to suggest in some areas and detail in other areas. But it's a beautiful painting, no question about it. And her neck should have been toned down too, because you got her neck as light as what's up on top.
And I felt like over on the right-hand side of her face, the right-hand side of the painting, where the shadow is darker in her hair, it's not quite as flat as this photograph makes it look. There is variation in it, but I think maybe it should be brought up.
No, I
Just
really don't. I really don't think so, because then it's going to fight with the other side of her hair on the
Okay.
left hand side. I think I could see the form in there. You suggested some of the waves in the hair in the shadow area, but you kept them in the shadow, and that's fine, because you don't want to trap any light between or inside of a dark area, and you did not do that. But I think overall you did a really nice job.
Thank you.
Faces
Thank
are
you.
not easy to do.
Well, that's all I do. I love faces.
That's good. I mostly do landscapes, and that's we all do things we like and so forth. And I had a friend on Facebook this morning. He's fairly well known oil painter, and he talks about the face, on how many varieties and things you can do with faces and the character in the face. And I wanted to tell him, but I didn't do it on Facebook. I says, and I can find the same character in a tree. It's all on how you look at your subject and what your favorite things are. Because I did a lot of portraits in college, and I did a lot of still lifes. I very seldom do portraits, and I have hardly ever done still lifes because I had my fill. But it's a personal taste of the subject matter that you want to do or you don't want to do.
Thank you very much.
Okay, you're welcome.
All right, we already saw Anne.
Okay.
Anne.
Okay, Denise, are you with us?
Yes, hi.
Okay. Your creek, let's go with the creek first. It needs to be toned down in the background to make it lay down. As it goes back, it's going to get a little bit more dark than what you do have it, and you can show a little bit more description in the foreground of some reflection. Just a little bit, not much.
Okay.
You handled a lot of the detail on the tree on the right, the bigger tree.
Yes.
Are you detail orientated person?
I kind of over detail sometimes. I think it gets too much.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's sometimes it can be a drawback and sometimes it's not. The foreground on the left of the creek there in the foreground here could have been a lot darker, and that allows the eye to hop up over and move into the background a little more. The background is fine. Off to the right hand side is good. The biggest thing that I'm seeing here is that your branches off that big tree are all the same length popping out.
You're right. I noticed that too, but I gave up. I'll go back and work again,
Yeah,
but
you can
this
bring some
is,
as you move up the tree about just a little bit below halfway. That one first
right.
large branch.
How are you? I don't have a mask on. I'm so sorry. Oh.
Ask Teresa to mute herself.
Okay. But you can start bringing some of the branches out as it moves up the tree a little bit to kind of break up the area a little bit. But I think for what the composition is, it's different than what the photograph is, but that doesn't make any difference. You're not painting the photograph necessarily. You're painting the subject matter and making some sense out of it. You could add a little bit of dark on the right hand side of the bank up near the tree. But yeah, the lower left near the foreground, the creek needs to be toned down in the background, a little bit of movement in the foreground, and a little bit of dark and near that big tree. And then as we come up about halfway on the tree, extend the branches out a little bit more. But I think overall, you really have a nice handling of the background and the trees off to the left. You kept things a little bit softer, which is nice.
Well, I don't have the experience a lot of the painters here do, but
Well,
it's great to get the input to learn from it. So
but overall, I think you did exceptionally well. And I know that everybody in the group doesn't paint every day. Um, you know, and the more you paint, the better off you are. You have to remember that for every 5 or 6 failures, you get a success, and that one will always be a little bit sweeter because you won't succeed without those failures.
well, I've been painting almost every day. This is the first painting I tried like this, and then I tried another. I have a lot of trouble with color because I don't have the experience for mixing it very well.
Okay.
So I felt
Um,
like I cheated because I didn't use as much of your palette as I could have.
okay, that's all right. Color is something that is a lifelong journey. Just to give you a quote, Rembrandt, when he was somewhere in his 80s, says, "I have now just learned to begin color." And he, and I'm thinking, oh, great, I have a long ways to go. Um, but my color palette has changed over the last 20 years, 4, 5, or 6 times, and my wife has noticed it. Um, and it kind of has a metamorphosis to it that you don't take note of right away. But the way we use color, the way we see color, does change quite a bit as we continue painting. So I think I'm looking at overall, it's holding together extremely well. You have unity within your color. So I wouldn't worry about it.
Oh, good. And
What
it's
you
not
have,
so bad to cheat.
oh
Reach for a
no,
tube that looks right.
no. I'm always telling the students that the first thing you have to be concerned about in painting is first the drawing, then the value, because the value does all the work. And then the last thing you're worried about is the color. But value does all the work, color gets all the glory. So if you have your value correct, your temperature correct, and your intensity is correct, in other words, the brightness of the colors and done put in correctly, if your color is off, nobody's going to know.
Okay, good to know. Good to know.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
we're going to move on.
Okay.
Ooh.
This I did like 3 years ago, two
Yeah.
or 3 years ago. So to me, that's a long time ago because I've only been doing this for intensely for like 5 years or so. So
Okay. Um, the biggest thing that bothers me, Denise, about this is your foreground.
Yeah, is it too heavy?
It's way too heavy, and then we have that diagonal, very
Yeah,
very
I
sharp
see it.
edge going across the foreground.
Mm-hmm.
You would have been better off leaving out the foreground. And if I take a piece of paper and
So
cover that,
just lop it off.
I yes. Um,
Well, that works. Yeah.
if I would, can you see what I'm doing? I don't
No,
know.
she can't
Okay,
see.
No,
you
I
can't.
can't.
But I got a piece of paper across that dark area of the foreground, and the rest of the painting then works fairly well. Um,
Okay.
you, I've done this. I had just taken what was it? A demonstration I did for my students here, and I took a painting. I did this and I did that, and I was kind of playing with it. And after the class was over with, I did not like something on the right hand side, and I cut it off an inch and a half of it. And I've done this probably about 4 or 5 times in my career as I've lopped part of the painting off, and suddenly the painting improved about 60%. And you
That
go,
makes sense because the front part, it takes over your eye, but it isn't anything great. So like, it makes
exactly.
sense.
It's too heavy, it's too bold, and you have that sharp, dark line that goes across.
Right.
And if you take that off, your painting improves 60%.
That's good to think about. I would be more than happy to chop it. This is a painting of a photo my niece took in Iceland of some falls there. I
Oh,
don't even know the name of the falls, but
yeah.
yeah,
Iceland has become one of the number one destinations before the COVID.
right,
It's
right.
absolutely primitive, gorgeous
Gorgeous.
up there. But I think that the rest of the painting works fairly well. You haven't overworked areas. You have a variety of color going on in the rocks from left to right and up to down. Um, I wouldn't change anything except I may take that dark blue or that heavier blue that's in the middle of the waterfall at the bottom.
Right.
I would take a damp brush and lighten some of that here and there, and that's it. Besides lopping off the bottom, and then suddenly
Good to know.
you'll have a wonderful painting.
Oh, well, thank you. I'll chop away.
Chop away. Take that X-Acto knife. If any of that dark shows up in the foreground as you cut,
Hmm.
what I would do is take a
Mute it.
wet paper towel and soften all of it
Yeah.
because you want
Is
to
it bad to use scrubber to do that? I use scrubber an awful lot.
use what?
A scrubber brush, is that a bad thing to do?
You could damage the fiber of the paper if you do too much of it. You'll open up the fibers.
Uh-huh.
I would take a clean sponge or a wet paper towel and soften it. That if any of that is left, because I know you have to chop it straight and that's going diagonally. Because I
Yeah,
don't want you to lose the bottom of the water in the waterfall.
yeah, that makes sense. It was, yeah, that makes sense. Thank you. That should help me a lot.
Okay. All right, we're going to move on then. And who do we have? Karen. Karen, are you with us?
I'm here.
Okay, good. This is like a seance once in a while. Are you there? Are you with us? Um,
Yeah. It's really dark on your monitor. Wow.
okay. Um, you've painted this a lot darker than what the scene was, okay?
Okay.
But on a positive note, it works exceptionally well. We have, instead of the sun being up, we have the sun going down. Your values are unified. The only thing that I would do is I would take a damp brush way in the background where the forest floor meets that upright vertical of those bluish gray trees back there, and ever so softly pull up a little bit of light back there, and the eye will follow back a little bit more. But overall, you have a different light on the subject, and you made it work.
And you know, Dale, this picture that I'm looking at is so much darker than my painting that I'm looking at. So
Well,
I don't.
even if it's darker, Karen, if I took this and lightened it up a bit, it would still be unified in value because
Okay.
all your values are correct within its own frame of reference here. And like I said, I don't judge the artwork according to the photograph. I judge the artwork according to what you've done. And I think that it's holding together extremely well.
That little pine tree in the far back middle left, is it too
Yes.
dark? Could it, should it be
No, no,
lightened?
it's not because you have darks in the foreground and the midground right hand side that balance it off.
Okay. But that's where you're talking about lightning is just to the right of that little pine tree.
I'm talking about right directly in the middle back there,
Right.
the ground where the yellow green is at.
Okay.
I would take a damp brush and remove maybe 10% of that, not too much, just a little bit. And that will suddenly create a little bit of spark back there for the eye to move further back.
Okay.
But I
Okay.
think that you did an extremely good job. And I'm liking everything that everybody has done. It's all done in a different way. And this is what I like about when students do all the same subject and then walk around and look at other people's stuff. They go, oh, they did it this way. Oh, they did it that way. And it's part of the learning experience for everybody is not only what I did and what you've done, but is looking at other people's artwork. You learn from every aspect.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And the other thing, when you show the next one, when I took the photographs, I noticed, and they're both on 300-pound arches paper, but this one was, and I did this one in a day. So I was really working, and I can see all kinds of things now that you've been talking to everyone. But it was so grainy when I took the picture, whereas the darker one, maybe I had more water when I put the paint on with the trees on the first one.
All right. Okay. You were tied to the photograph
Yeah.
quite a lot, which I can see that. You eliminated that tree in the foreground that was sticking up, which I can understand why. The thing that kind of bothers me, two things. The first thing is those logs that you lifted out.
Yeah, my daughter says those are awful, Mom. You need to put some form to them.
Yeah, you want to go back and kind of not eliminate them, but disguise them more.
Okay.
And then up in the middle upper half of the waterfall, those rocks that you have up there, as right where the waterfall becomes very skinny, right there. And
Okay. Oh, yeah, up there. Wait, where
you
it first
can make,
starts to.
yeah, you can make that a little bit darker because you don't want them being attracted down at the bottom as much as in the middle area of the upper waterfalls where those light logs start up to the upper, I would say, 3/4 of it. You want to put in some stronger darks in there, which will attract the eye with more contrast of value.
I'm not sure I followed that. Where the waterfall first starts down between
Yeah,
those two
as it
dark
comes
rocks.
down, it's very skinny right there.
Yes.
The rock formation that's off to the right, you want to emphasize a little bit more dark on the right up against the light, where it goes into shadow on the rock and up near the waterfall a little bit. And as you come down, you can emphasize a little bit more dark down below that just before you hit those light logs that you're going to disguise.
With the light logs you're talking about that are in the green grass, green bushes, or are you talking about the logs actually in the water?
The logs in the water.
Oh.
Right? Try to disguise those a little bit, but don't try to get rid of them totally because you could mess up what you have that's going well right in there.
Well, what about those trees on the right that are going up into the trees and grasses?
In the middle area?
Right where the darker pool is before the last drop of the waterfall. Yeah,
Oh,
on
right in the middle area here with those.
the yellow trees.
Oh, the yellow trees up in here. That's not bothersome.
That doesn't bother you. It's more the ones up there. Okay.
You know, I think overall, I mean, you have a long drop of water, and I think if you, because up on top you have the falls that are a little bit lighter, and as they went down, you toned them down, which is what you wanted to do. But the biggest thing is getting rid of those trees that you lifted out, those trunks. You can narrow them up and tone them down a little bit.
The ones that are actually out in the water.
Yeah.
Okay, now the other thing that bothered me is I did add rocks on the left because I took that tree out and I thought it
Yes.
needed something. But I don't like, after looking at it, after I'd already sent it to you, those rocks down below are just a nice straight line.
Yeah, I've seen that. You could add a few more rocks to make the eye move a little bit differently.
Yeah.
Nature's not that perfect in lining up rocks.
So is my green too much green all the way around to the value all the same all over?
The tree that's off to the left on the border, leave alone. The trees that are where the fallen logs are at,
Yes.
you can cool that down and camouflage those lifted out logs. Cool it down
Okay.
with some bluish green. It's a little
On
bit
the
too
tree.
warm.
But and then I mean, as you can see from the picture, there were a lot of dead pines and stuff, and just like the barn that we talked about being too big, I have trouble getting everything on the
Well,
paper.
yeah, but you don't have to put everything on the paper.
Okay, all right.
You have to tell yourself, I'm not copying a photograph, I'm interpreting it and rearranging the subject matter to make it work better. But don't do a Xerox copy of it in your painting.
I really had trouble trying to get the pooling areas look like they were flat and pooling before it
I
dropped
actually
down.
I think you did pretty well from what I'm seeing here.
Okay, well, I added that dark on the left of the last drop
Yeah.
to make it and extended it up towards the top a little bit, and then
No, you did that correctly to make it fall from that point. So you're fine.
okay, well,
Yeah. The thing is that we have a tendency of being very critical on ourselves when we start seeing things. So I think the biggest thing is those logs that you lifted out in the middle of the waterfall and alongside to the right down below that.
the ones on the right that my daughter hated, she said I need to put some formation on them that they're just too stark.
They're too stark, they're too heavy, so you can put value alongside of them to narrow them up and then put some foliage over parts of them, but not all of them.
Okay, all right, thank you,
I think overall you did fairly well.
thank you.
Okay, we're going to go on if we can here. Norma, are you with us? Norma, are you here?
Unmute yourself, Norma.
Okay, now can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Okay.
Okay, I'm here.
All right, good. You have a park-like setting, which is not bad. It's a lot more open. Let's start in the background and come forward. Your background is fine. There's nothing wrong with it. You've created, I'm looking very close at, I'm scrutinizing things. I'm looking very close at, and you have a variety of value in color and temperature and intensity in the background, which is nice. And it's muted down as far as the intensity. It's grayed down nicely. That yellow-green area that's in the back, far back, which is about halfway through the painting, you can take and lift up a little bit because intensity of color is going to come forward very rapidly on you. And what right now, it's too intense in the middle area of that yellow-green. So tone that down.
Yeah, I went back in and added that because I thought I got too dark with some of my stuff. So I put it back in there.
No.
So lighten that. Okay.
No, you need to lighten it up, lift it up a little bit.
Okay.
You can add one more tree, which you have room for, off to the right hand side, kind of that tree that's in the back that's kind of bluish, that little small one.
Yes.
If you come out in front of that and move off to the right hand side a little bit more than that other tree is away from that small one, you could put in a tree right there. I'm looking at, when I tell students that odd numbers of trees, rocks, whatever the case may be, or people, is more pleasant to the eye than even numbers. So I'm seeing that small tree and then a large tree in the foreground. If you put another one off to the right of that skinny one in the background, that would be a little bit more pleasing to the eye and a little bit better for the composition.
Okay.
You,
It should come forward. How far forward would it
I
come?
would say about a third of the way forward from that skinny one, but not directly in between those two. So
Okay.
start it. You have an area of that warm color, that little path.
Yes.
Okay, just in back of that little path, you want to start at the bottom of the tree.
Okay.
But
Okay.
you've simplified the composition to where it works nice. Um, it's more open than what the photograph was, but again, I'm not worried about that. Um, Down in the lower left, just in front of that tree that you have that's more prominent,
Yes.
I would sprinkle a little bit of water with a toothbrush and lift it to create a little bit of airiness.
Okay.
And you have a very pleasant look to the painting. It's light, it's airy, it's holding together well. You have unification of color. So just to recap, lighten that yellow green way up in the background, add that one tree, and lighten by lifting with some water and a toothbrush in the lower left. And I think
Okay. I can do that.
yeah, it's I always find it fascinating on how many different views you can get of a subject matter through the different students' eyes.
I
It's
felt like I lost some of the greens because I don't know. I seem to paint dark. I had to go back in and lighten up some of that dark. And I
well,
kind of lost some of the greens, I think, but
you
I
did
tried to get them back.
you did fairly well. The only other little picky little thing that I could tell you is those branches the what I call dead branches off the pine coming out.
Yes.
You can bring that heavier one out a little bit further
Okay.
and keep it light as it's going out. And you can bring another one down about, oh, just through that light area in the background here. Add a little bit of a sprout of a dead branch just for interest, but nothing more than that.
Okay. And on which tree did you say the last one? Would it be
The,
on
the,
that big
the,
tree or the little one?
the big tree in the foreground
The right.
Okay.
on the
Okay.
right.
Okay.
I had a very swampy scene that I did at a workshop uh, a year ago or 2 years ago. And I'm always emphasizing don't worry about what the photograph is, worry about your painting. And this um, lady came up with a painting instead of a swamp. She came up with an inlet of a lake that a cove, and then went out to the larger part of the lake. And she said, "This is not what the photograph was showing me." I says, "Yeah, but it's what your painting is telling you." And she came up with a beautiful painting. She actually added a sailboat out on the lake way in the background. And I said, "See how it works?" She said, "I never would have thought that it would have worked." But I says, "It's a different subject matter, but it's still you're painting what came out of it." And it turned out fine. So I never
Okay.
try to become married to the photograph.
Okay.
It's a commission.
Thank you.
Unless it's a commission, then it's a totally different subject.
I don't do commissions. I don't do commissions for that reason.
Okay, we're going to go to your next painting here.
Okay.
Okay. All right. The all three prominent birches are handled too similar.
Okay.
Um, you want to simplify things as they go back.
Okay.
Uh, the foreground where you have the warm color reflecting into the water,
Yeah.
you could intensify that a little bit. And the edge that's the bank up against the river just below the geese there,
Mm-hmm.
you can soften that a little bit in certain areas with a damp brush.
Oh, okay.
Um, and then take a warmish wash just from that main pine or birch tree in the foreground, moving off to the right. Take a warm wash of color, some raw sienna mixed with a little bit of the, I would say, burnt sienna, and wash that sandy area down, I think it is, or the foreground. Wash it very lightly with a little bit of that color so that the foreground comes forward a little bit more.
Oh, okay.
Where was this taken?
Well, I I call it Sugar Creek. Out here in Hancock County, Sugar Creek runs behind me, and I took the picture there. But we don't have those kind of trees there. I changed the look of the trees.
All right.
Like,
So you're near Turkey Run someplace?
no, I'm out in Hancock County, out by Greenfield.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
and
All right.
Sugar Creek runs behind my house. Yeah.
All right. The only other thing that is not telling me the story, this creek swings around to the left and then it goes to the right again.
Yeah, I couldn't decide.
Okay.
It really goes back to the right, way back there, and this that you see in the foreground is more starting a runoff of it.
Okay. All right.
And so that's I know I didn't get that quite right. I don't know
Right.
what to do with it.
Well, I think you just leave the foreground alone in the water. The background where the shore is at in the water,
Yes.
where they meet, take your 1-inch brush or flat brush that's just damp and lift a little bit of a broken light line to where the water hits the shore in the background, so that it shows a little bit of light bouncing up against it.
Oh, okay.
And that will differentiate the water from the land
Okay, gotcha.
ever so softly.
Okay.
I think overall this is pretty good too.
Okay, thank you. I thought maybe my values were a little off, but you think they're okay?
Well, you always squint down your eyes for value. You open your eyes for color. And I'm always telling students to step back from your painting to see how it looks, because many paintings are not meant to be seen up close all the time. So,
Okay.
no, you did fairly well.
Okay, well, thank you.
You're welcome.
I'll work on it.
Okay. All right, we're going to Ron. Are you there for us?
Let me make sure I did.
Oh, wait a minute.
No, okay.
Okay, Ron.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, good.
Just a quick mention here. This is on watercolor canvas.
Oh, okay. That's always interesting to work on.
Yeah.
Was this from your own photograph or from something?
No, this is just kind of out of my head. I've painted so many barns and farm buildings and other buildings that I just I kind of create a shape, and what I really try to do is create an interesting shape.
Well, I like the painting. You got it balanced off with the trees and so forth in the background. I'm assuming this is snow, correct?
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
The only snow can take on so many different colors and values depending on what's around it, because light objects will reflect those colors. And you have a good line of where the grasses are coming up, and you create a real nice movement here. I would have maybe added not a lot of, but just a little bit of cooler color in the foreground, and which would emulate some of that cool color you have the cast shadow off the tree in the background coming along. But overall, I think it's really a nice painting. The only big criticism I would have is that you need to watch your edges, that they're not all equally in focus.
Mm-hmm.
And that way your eye kind of wraps around the subject matter better, because our eyes follow those in focus sharp edges all the time, and around the edge of the barn you could have lost some of that. But one of the things that I've always wondered about is we spend so much time on the drawing, getting the drawing right, and then we have to lose some of the lines. And I think as humans, we work so hard on it, we don't want to lose those lines because we work so hard on them. But we have to be careful. The top of the roof is the big thing that bothers me. The front half of the barn is on the peak is higher, and as you go off to the left, it suddenly drops.
Mm-hmm.
Do you notice that?
You mean the top edge of the roof?
Yeah, the peak of or the ridge line of the roof.
Yeah, I kind of had it as an angle because of the juxtaposition of the building. It's sitting at a 3/4 view. Yeah, but I do see what you. Yeah.
Yeah, it should have gone down at an angle, not just dropped. But I love the color you got in the barn. You got greens in the barn, you got yellows in the barn, you got browns, you got a little bit of coolness in the barn, you got some reds in the barn. You got every color that's in and around the composition in the barn, which helps unify. And I like the grayness of the colors in the background. You did really kind of a neat job on this.
Well, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions that you have on this one, Ron?
Well, it's really fun to paint on. Just a comment. It's really fun to paint on watercolor canvas. It's very different.
Oh yeah.
But you can really get some nice stuff to happen when you're soft. The soft edges can really be easier to attain than on paper, I think.
Well, yeah, you have the texture of the canvas, and it kind of weeps out a little bit.
Yeah, right.
It's like working from cold press or rough watercolor paper to hot press. You have a totally different look. So when I'm choosing the paper, I'm looking at the subject matter which best suits it. And
yes,
this does fairly well.
Yeah.
Could I ask a question?
Yes.
With watercolor canvas, what are the lifting properties?
Oh, you can lift, and in fact, that's almost a problem. No problem. I've done this before. I've started painting on watercolor canvas, didn't like it. You can wash the whole thing completely off, back to white. You can take it off. And the other thing is, when you do one of these on you have to spray it with a clear acrylics fix, because if you don't and you drop any water on it, it's gone.
Yep.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, it's a different thing. You can lift very quickly and easily.
Yes.
And tint back in, but it has to be sealed.
Yeah.
Right now, I want to be experimenting this year with varnishing with a spray on my watercolors. You have to give 2 coats of gloss and 2 coats of matte, and you can mount these things so I don't have to deal with glass.
Yeah, well, that's the other benefit of watercolor canvas. You don't have to cover it in glass. You don't have to mat it. You can frame it just like an oil painting.
Yeah, exactly. So there's different things you can do with the canvas or spraying the watercolor.
Yeah.
But this is nice. Okay, we're going to go on to the next one.
Okay.
Okay. I have to ask you, who's your favorite watercolorist, Ron?
Well, I got a couple of favorites. Tony Couch is a guy who's mentored me a long time. Gee, I like Dean Mitchell. I like John Solomon, and this was back in an era, I think, when I was painting more like oh gosh, I lost it at the name right now. Can't remember it. Anyway.
You have a reminiscence of, yes, Tony Couch, a little bit of John Pike.
Yeah.
With the color variations that you have.
Yeah.
I really like this painting. It's a little bit more graphic in its approach, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I like the way you allowed things just to fall away in the background. The only thing that bothers me compositionally is the tree coming off the picture plane on the right with no foreground. That's it's something that's a little picky. It's not a huge problem, but there's things that some artists like and dislike personally, and it's not a huge mistake by any means, but it bothers me a little bit. But the colorations you have in the tree trunk and the way that you manipulated the branches going up and through the main tree and even in the tree in the background, really quite nice. The way that you handle the sky in soft gradation going from top to bottom, and then the shore across the way, very nicely done. It's muted, it's got a little bit of interesting shape, but not overly interesting. But I can see that you've been influenced by different artists from the past, which we all are. I'm influenced by not only watercolors. Winslow Homer is one of my favorites, but Sargent did a lot more watercolors than he did oils. And then my own instructor, who I had as a mentor, was Irving Shapiro, who was my instructor and also became my boss after he hired me at the American Academy of Art. But we're all influenced by different things, and very nice though. I just like the way that you handled the negative painting on the leaves on the tree and stuff. Not overly handled it, but you just have it down in the right spots at the right time.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I absolutely bombed out on the demo. I could not. I tried 3 times, Dale, and I just couldn't get into it.
Well, I understand that. When I'm doing a demonstration for an art league or something, and it's something that I haven't done in a while or I haven't done, I actually do a small study of it before going into it to understand the process more than anything else of how I want to present it. And that I don't have a problem with you bombing out on it, because I have bombed out on things in the past too, because we can't do everything perfect. I don't care who you are, and if an artist says they don't make mistakes, they're lying. They all make mistakes.
Yeah, amen.
But I like what you've got here. I like the technique that you're using.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Yep, let's go to the next person. Okay, Linda. Are you with us?
I am.
Okay. How do you feel about your painting? I'm going to ask you first.
Well, I did this, I tried to keep up with you on the tape on the video that you sent. And I didn't go back in it at all, which I need to do on a lot of things. Okay. I will kind of say, like Denise, I paint very, very seldom. And so I have a lot, I'm in awe of all these paintings of these people before me, and I know some of them after me. So I'll just, whatever.
Well, let me tell you this. On your painting, the tree in the foreground, the trees in the background, the pine trees, and the way you handled the background, with the exception of one thing, you did an exceptional job on. I really like what you've got. The trees that are dry brushed in the middle back there, in the what I call the fog, they're a little bit too harsh, which can be corrected with a damp brush by softening them. You have nothing here that can't be corrected. The foreground, you got a little bit too dry brush happy, which, when you're trying new things, you go, oh, does this work? Does that work? Oh, this works well, and you continue doing it.
Yeah.
I can understand it. If you spray a little bit of water on those bushes that are where the pine trees are coming off the left, you can soften up and give some variable texture to them. And if you darken up the foreground on the left up against the creek and going to the picture plane to the left, that will help the painting because the eye will hop up over that dark and into the painting nicer. And you can also darken in the foreground in the lower right ahead of that major pine tree. But I think that you did an exceptional job on that, on the pine trees with the big one and the ones in the background left and right. But that dry brushing, the more dry brushing you do, it creates detail which attracts the eye. Soften those pine trees way in the back in the background, and suddenly you'll start seeing changes. But it's kind of interesting because I can look on my wife's iPad, which makes the painting smaller, and it kind of tightens up. It looks nice. It's just that we need to soften some of those edges and darken up some of the values in the foreground.
Right up, I really liked the background right in the center at first, and then I went back in it and I got a great big gob up at kind of 2/3 of the way up the page.
Yeah.
And that it kind of went away from there.
Yeah. Well, soften it with a damp brush.
Okay.
I had a student years ago and I was showing him how to scratch things out to create texture in a watercolor. And I told them not to overuse it. You know, it's for small, minimal detail. And he handed in a painting that was scratched out. Helen Keller could have read this painting. And I ended up giving him an F plus. And I told him, I says, redo it and you can get your grade better. But I says, you don't want to overdo something at any point. And you overdid it a little bit in the background, but he titled his painting, "When in Doubt, Scratch It Out." And I says, you don't want to do that. So soften that in the background with a damp brush and you'll see that it will start working much, much better for you.
Okay.
I think overall you did pretty good for the subject matter. Was something brand new. And you have to, the more you experiment, the more you'll paint better.
Yeah, I just need to paint more.
Well, we all do, I guess. Okay, we'll go to your next one if you don't mind. Okay. All right. Flowers, hard to do, to get them right. I like the top half of your flowers, the vase and so forth. You've suggested and allowed things to soften and blur. You kind of spattered paint, which is nice. Your foliage down towards the bottom where it comes out of the vase could have been a little bit more dark here and there to suggest individual pattern of the flower petals a little bit more. The big thing that bothers me is each of the yellow flowers are almost the same. The ones that are off to the right could have been toned down with a very quick wash. The one that's hanging off the bottom off to the left could have been washed down a little bit so that the two prominent yellow flowers that are up in the middle area would have come forward more.
Okay.
But doing flowers is a tough subject to do in watercolor because there's a lot of painting around and negative painting. But in that middle area around those two main yellow flowers, you could have added some accent darks on and around those to make them pop.
Okay.
But I commend you for trying a difficult subject. But I love the top part of it on how it just falls off. Suggestion of flowers when it was wet on wet. That's exactly how you want to handle groups of flowers like that and have just a few prominent coming out.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, Pat. Pat Such, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay, just checking. I think you did pretty good on this.
Really?
Yes. It's a little bit out of focus on the iPad here if I look at my wife's smaller iPad, it comes into focus a little bit more because it's reduced. But the pattern of your lights and darks are pretty good. I have to tell everybody, Pat is in my palette and chisel class, Zoom class up in Chicago, and she's been doing a lot of different subjects with me. So with this subject, I probably threw a little bit of a curved ball. But when I look back from a distance here, it's working quite well. I wish the photograph was a little bit more in focus, but I'm not going to worry about that.
I did send you two, because one, the lighting wasn't very good. So I noticed when I took another picture that it was better. So I don't know which one you're looking at.
It's a little bit out of focus.
But I picked the lighter of the two.
But Marilee picked the lighter. Marilee
Yeah,
picked the lighter
the
of
darker
two.
one was truer to what it actually looked like.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, let's just do this one and say it works better than the darker one.
Okay.
But you have the airiness in the background that I was looking for. You also allowed not to block out with a lot of heavy washes on both left and right, which is working fine. Again, what I'm seeing here in the photograph is the directly in the back with that yellow green. It can be lifted a little bit to soften it and lighten it because it's a little bit too intense for that far back.
Okay.
The only other thing that I would do is that dark area that's below the trees on the left-hand side that are mid-ground, is I would spritz it with some water with the toothbrush and lift to get a little bit more airiness in there. But I think overall, like everybody else, they come up with a different painting than what the photograph was, and yours is just a little bit more different. I like the way you got the bluish tint in the background, way in the background. The only thing that I'm seeing that I would change first is up at the top of the painting, the pine bough that's directly in the middle is too yellow green, a little bit too yellow green. Tone it down and add a branch to it to support it.
Okay. Okay.
But it's nice.
Thank you.
Got a nice look to it. All right, we're going to go to your next one.
Yeah. I'd be interested to hear what you have to say about this.
Okay, your horizon line in the background is leaning,
Okay.
if I'm seeing this correctly.
Yeah.
You see where it's going downhill, it should be running horizontal.
Uh-huh.
The yellow snow back there is too yellow. You want to kind of lift that. So you can actually, what you can do is take a damp brush and lift and straighten out your horizon line at the same time.
Okay.
And you could probably, to straighten it out even more, if you have to lift a little bit too much, is to add a little bit more of the horizon line of that bluish tint back there to straighten out the horizon line. You can also add some spray of the watercolor up in that dark area of the pines and the trees overhanging the bank to lift out a little bit of light.
So where again? Right.
In that the dark mass, you need to lift out a little bit of light off to the upper left-hand side of it to create a little bit more airiness. Then the only other thing that, I mean, besides the horizontal line being going downhill back there in the yellow, is the foreground snow on the lower right is gotten a little bit too overhandled. You can see if you can lift some of that so this you have this, I don't know, grayish look to it.
I know. I tried and I thought, well, you know what? I don't want to overdo it. And I was just going to see what you said.
see if you can lift it in little increments here and there to break it up. Don't try to lift the whole thing because
Yeah,
I
right.
feel you would be doing too much. But I like the the light coming through the woods on the snow in the background and the cast shadow going across the ice. Um, Everybody else, this was an assignment that we did a paint along on at the Palette and Chisel 2 weeks ago, and it was quite a bit different subject. As simple as it looked, I was telling the students that it's more difficult to do a simpler subject because our tendencies are to add too much. So I think if you lift that in small increments, that grayness, and not try to lift all of it, it would look so much better.
Okay. Okay.
And straighten out that horizon line back there.
Yeah, I think maybe the picture's a little crooked because I looked at the picture behind me and it doesn't look that crooked.
Okay.
So
Then it's the picture that we have here.
yeah. Yeah. I think maybe I took the picture crooked, but I will work on it.
I've done that before. Okay,
Thank you.
good.
Are we done?
I don't know. Yeah, yes, we're done with Pat. Okay. Mary Jane, are you with us?
I'm here.
You have a nice path in an open area of the woods. This is totally different than what the photograph is, which is fine. You could emphasize way in the background in the foggy pines, you can emphasize that to be a little bit stronger so there's not so much of a wide open area back there. And you need to tone the creek down as it recedes away from us so that it's not looking like it stands up.
Okay.
The other thing I'm looking at is your path that I did not use in my painting, but it was in the photograph off to the right. You have a hard edge going along it, and you need to take a damp brush and soften, I would say 80% of that so that it kind of is lost and found a little bit more.
Yeah, I started to do that, and all I was doing was messing it up. So I finally decided I just better leave it alone.
Yeah, we like to define things a little bit too much sometimes. I do it occasionally, and it's like I used to do it all the time as a student. But I would say that if you soften that up and probably darken up the foreground on the lower right,
Okay.
strengthen the pine trees in the back, and then leave it alone.
Okay.
And you'll end up with a different painting than what I have, but that's okay.
I know it began to look like a manicured park more than a.
Yes, it does. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like a park with a walkway and so forth. But what's wrong with having a park look to it rather than a swampy scene?
Yeah.
There's nothing, it's just a matter of how you deal with it. No, the rest, you've got clean color. You have a nice handling of the watercolor. It's just that you need to tone the creek down in the back, add some darks in the lower right, and soften that path.
Yeah.
And then bring out a few more dead branches coming across a little bit more to close that area in.
Okay.
But pretty good. I like it.
When you talked about rosemary brushes last week,
Yes.
I had like an inch cattail and a 3/4 inch cattail that were like the silver brushes. And so I went online and I kept thinking I needed one that was smaller. And I finally went online and I found one in the rosemary brushes, and it's half squirrel, half synthetic, and it only costs $13.17 plus whatever it cost to ship it. But it came within just a couple days, which really surprised me because it was coming from England.
That surprises me too.
So it was really reasonable, I thought.
Very reasonable. Usually I'm not a big fan of synthetic, but the synthetic real hair blends are pretty good.
Yeah, and that's what this was.
That's a good deal. Yeah, because rosemary brushes are excellent brushes.
And they sent a big catalog at the same time, so that's great too.
Yeah.
Just wait till you get to the next painting.
All right, hang on for a minute. Okay.
Oh, this is her second note that you. And you just talked about the cat tongue.
Okay, we're gonna
There you
go.
go.
All right, this is Mary Jane with the waterfall that I did for Lakeland Art League. You need to define your water more. It's as it falls down, it has more light to it, that more foamy look.
Okay.
The background is fine except for that dead fallen branch that I added to the painting.
Okay.
You need to tone that down. It's sticking out too much.
Okay.
But you need to add more emphasis in some of the darks as the waterfall falls down around that central rock.
Okay. Would you use gouache to do that?
No, I would use the yellow, green, and green watercolor to emphasize some of it.
Oh, okay.
And in a dry brush fashion. So you're using your brush on the side of the brush itself.
Okay.
But you have everything in the right spot. You just need to take it further and start adding that. What I'll do is, you should have the photograph of that, the finish of it. Do you?
I don't think I know I have your photograph that you sent to paint from. I'm not sure I've got the other one.
All right. At the end of the critique, I'll show you the painting.
I can also send it to her.
Merely also put it in the slideshow at the beginning. I don't know if you saw that.
Okay.
But I can also send you the painting.
Why don't I send you the picture of the painting so that you can see it?
That'd be great. Thank you.
Oh, sure thing. But you just need more definition in the water. It's a little bit too foamy.
Okay.
But everything else, you got everything else in the right place, but it just needs to be taken further.
Okay.
And so it's getting over the fear of adding more.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's go to the next person if you don't mind. Okay, Nancy. Are you with us? Nancy?
Yes.
Okay, good. It seems to be fairly common through most of the paintings of the swamp scene that the water needs to be toned down in the background so it lays down a little bit more. Okay? You have, again, a different scene. This reminds me of an area that they logged about 10 years ago, and you have certain trees that are standing and other ones have been taken down. It's a different view, but overall it's working quite well. The thing that bothers me is the mass of the pine trees in the back left doesn't have enough tree trunk to hold that mass up. It's a little bit too large, so if you increase the size of the tree trunk and bring it forward to I would say about mid-ground, start at the bottom of the tree, that can hold up that mass better.
Okay.
And then darken the lower left and the lower right of the painting, and that will help the eye move back quicker. So this was your second painting of this?
Well, I didn't finish the first one.
Okay.
I got a little frustrated with the first one, so I got about halfway through, and I said, "Geez, I'm just going to start all over again."
All right.
And
but
I lost a lot of light in my first one,
yeah,
and I didn't think I could, recoup it. I think I will try to finish it. It's just going to be very different, but.
Well, being different is not bad. You have to remember that. What you have here is a little bit more open area, less swampy looking than what my photo reference was, but
Right.
There's nothing wrong with that. this reminds me of a different place that I've hiked, that's not that swampy, and there's nothing wrong with that. You just need that tree, that bigger tree, to hold up that mass on the left. But it's just a different painting, and I like what's going on.
Okay. So just darken the two sides of lower right and lower left hand corner.
Yeah, but not equally. Make the left side of the creek a little bit darker than the right side.
Okay.
And then add that one tree in the back to be a little bit larger and pull it forward a little bit more. But leave the rest of it alone. It's fine.
Okay.
That you did actually a very good job. Don't be overly critical about what you've achieved here.
Okay. Thank you.
We're gonna go to your next painting if you don't mind. Okay, we got the boat. Is this your boat or somebody else's?
It's a family friend's boat.
It's a nice looking boat. It needs to have a little bit more value form to it. The reason why I'm saying is that the top part of the boat's going to receive more light, the cabin and so forth. The side of the boat you can tone down a little bit, probably. The reflection in the water is fine. The trees in the background are fine. You don't need to overextend that on the tree. If you did this again, the same thing with what I said on somebody's barn previous, is that the barn was too big.
It was.
I can't remember whose it was now.
Wasn't that Rosemary or Rose?
It might have been Rose.
Mary Rose?
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah.
Ann Rose.
It was Ann Rose.
Yeah. The boat is too big for the size of the painting, because I'm looking at it reaches almost all the way across, except the motor in the back is just a little bit off the edge and the bow is a little bit off the other edge. Reducing the size of the boat would help the painting, or increasing the size of the picture plane to make it larger would help the painting. That is the only big criticism I have on it, besides almost being cut in half horizontally from top to bottom with the boat.
Yeah.
These are things we don't notice because we've become attached maybe to the photograph a little bit too much. So if you have more space above the boat and less space below the boat, it would have been a stronger painting, and the boat a little bit smaller. But everything else that you have there is very nice. I like the way you handle things, except that the bottom of the base of the boat needed to be toned down a little bit more, so the top part needs to it just needs to have a little bit more form. And a white boat is hard to manipulate.
So just gray down a little bit of the bottom part of the boat, but don't touch around the cabin?
Yes, exactly. So that the boat is going to pick up a little bit of that color that's been reflected in the water. I mean, a tiny bit.
Okay.
You have to remember, white objects will reflect color that's around it, and where dark objects will absorb the color around it, so it's not going to be evident of what's the colors around it on a dark object. But
So
go ahead.
Will it reflect some of the tree color?
Yes, a little bit of the tree color, and because it's reflected down in the water, it's going to bounce back up.
Yeah.
Because you always have to figure that the water is kind of like a mirror when it's kind of still. Even top part of the boat will reflect a little bit of that color. It will pick it up, but not. If you tone down the base of the boat, it won't look flat.
Okay.
I'm amazed at how many wonderful paintings I'm looking at today that you've done different from the demo. A lot of different subject matter, a lot of different handlings.
The photo that I used as a reference for this had the middle tree and the one on the right hand side were bright red, bright red.
And you toned it down, which was good.
I did, so that the boat would command more attention.
Yeah, yeah. But you need to include the boat with the rest of the colors in the painting, just minor tints of those colors so that it becomes unified.
Okay, I can do that.
Yeah, very easily. Okay, great.
Thank you.
Okay, Diane. Are you there?
Okay. Yes, I'm here.
Okay, I know you didn't finish the painting, but
No.
there's nothing wrong with not finishing something. Everything that you've put down up to this point has been fine. What you need to do is to go back to the background, and you need to add more grayed down blue-green in the background, and then come forward and start adding more foliage a little bit on the left side,
Okay.
and then start putting in your larger trees in the foreground, and then go back after that left side's been a little dry, add the trees that you have in over there, and then tone the creek down a little bit.
Okay.
But right now you've got good bones to continue. You've done nothing wrong. You just need to go into it and finish it with some confidence and some vigor.
So I have only done like one other landscape. So so you say the trees in the background need to be
A little bit stronger.
a little stronger.
Little bit, yes.
When I got done with this, after I sent you the picture, I thought that the tree on the right looked all too much the same.
No, I look at it as being different from the ones on the left.
True.
And you can still add more darks to the one on the right down below, but not up on top.
Okay. I did see I've got a straight line there on the bottom around the base of the tree. I didn't have any brown matter, so I was trying to make it up with a brown matter, with a burnt sienna, Indian red with a little bit of another red. So that
Okay.
wasn't able to raise much.
If you take burnt sienna and alizarin crimson and mix it together, you'll get a facsimile of the brown matter.
Okay.
Like I say, I've stopped using alizarin crimson unless it says it's permanent.
Yeah.
Because alizarin crimson fades rapidly over the years, and the brown matter does not. It's permanent.
Okay. I have a question, and maybe you can give us a hint. So I've thought about doing landscapes before, but when I go out and look at the world, it looks it's hard to find a composition. Can you give me any tips on how to find something?
What you want to do is create a viewfinder.
Oh, okay.
In other words, you can take a small piece of mat board, cut a rectangle in it that is like 2 by 3, and you can hold that up. And usually when I went outside at first, because when you're painting outside, it's hard to figure out where my painting starts, top and bottom, and where it starts, top and bottom, left and right. And I would take a small piece of mat, I'd cut a 2 by 3 or 3 by 4 rectangle in it, and I'd stick it on a pole out in front of me, and I'd look through that, and that helped me isolate my subject matter.
Okay.
That's the easiest way to do it till you get used to locating what you want to paint, but it helps isolate everything for you.
So another thing on my painting, I noticed on the far left, I got it a little bit too blue. Should I either lighten that or add more blue?
No. Once you start adding the tree trunks in a little bit more of the foliage, that is fine, because I was going to say off to the far right, you can add a little bit more of that blue that you have on the left.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay, add more blue to the right.
Yeah.
All right.
But you're fine. Okay, we'll go to your next one.
Thank you. Thank you. I didn't have another one. Well, that's not mine. That's
All right.
Rachel's.
All right, we're going to go to Rachel.
Thank you.
Rachel, are you there?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay. This is a composition with the buildings and a river out in front. You like to use a lot of bright colors, and the foreground with the banks of the river and so forth. Did you use ink with this?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was a plein air piece, and we had, once they stamp your paper, you have 2 hours.
Oh, okay. That explains some things then.
Yeah.
Um, the the pen and ink, when you're lining things off with pen and ink, instead of outlining, use the ink on the interior, because outlines become very harsh to the eye and follow things. You could have added more of the greens and so forth in the foreground on the banks of the river and so forth to pull the color down from the foliage that you had up above. I like the sky. It's nice and loose and airy, but the rest of the painting doesn't match that, or the sky doesn't match the rest of the painting. It depends on how you look at it. But to unify this, you could have used more ink work in the trees in the middle ground and added more color that was on the grassy areas around the river. Was this done down in Lafayette or Indianapolis or?
This is Forest Park in St. Louis.
Oh, okay. All right.
But see, now after watching your demo of the forest scene, I always felt like my ink pen, I would pull it out because I didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
And so watching your demo layered, how you're building the texture up against the water,
Mm-hmm.
now I'm thinking, okay, if I were to do this again as a plein air piece, I would be able to handle it without pulling out an ink pen.
Ink pens, when you're doing watercolor, can be a harsh addition to a painting, and you have to kind of watch it. We have a tendency of outlining everything, and outlines attract the eye and make things flat quite a bit. So you lose your form when you start outlining. But on the other hand, the colors that you used, I like the colors. It's light, airy, it's bright, but you needed to take it further.
Yeah.
But I want to go to the market area that you have. The next one. This is fun. It's light, airy, it's bright. Where was this done?
That started as a plein air, but it was too complicated at that point. So it's like a flower. It was an outdoor flower shop, and this was in Springfield.
Okay. I like the way you handled it. It reminds me of a advertisement for a floral shop. And it's bright, it's airy, it's attractive to the eye. You handled all the flowers and so forth really rather nice, the way that you pulled it all together, because it's simplified in the background on the right, but it's more complicated in the foreground. It just needs to be, the people need to be darker in certain areas, such as the shadow areas, to balance off the darks in the background. But you have to watch your edges, that not every edge is going to be in focus. And that's one of our problems, because we spend so much time drawing, we don't want to lose our edges. When I tell the students, now it's time you have to lose some of those edges. And they go, what do you mean lose them? Well, you have to soften them. But overall, it's really a nice impromptu watercolor, because I think it's kind of cool, and it's different than what other people do.
But again, I have to, with these two pieces, and that's why I pulled them out, because I didn't get a chance to do the demo, is greens are so hard. And after watching the demo and understanding how to mix to get green, rather than use it out of the tube, because there's not much mixing here with the green.
No, I know there's not mixing here, but that I think is to be truthful, part of the charm of the painting. But doing, I guess, mixing up different greens for a color chart will help you memorize different ways that you can do greens or oranges or reds or whatever the case may be. But going through an exercise of creating color charts for different colors really instills it in your memory, as it would taking notes in any class. You take the notes and then you revisit them, and then your mind is sparked by certain things that the instructor said, and then you can continue on from there. But like I said, part of the charm of this is the impromptu that it takes on at this point. So I don't judge whether you're cross mixing the colors or you're not. You just handled it in a different way. But yeah, experiment with cross mixing colors. It's really kind of interesting. Even taking a blue violet or a violet or a red violet and mixing it with a complement, you can pick up green violets, you can pick up brown violets, you can pick up grayed down red violets, which will create a different dimension to your painting. So have no fear, jump in. The only thing that happens is that it's wrong and you try it again.
Yep.
Okay? Any other questions that you have, Rachel?
Nope.
Okay. All right, Susan.
Yes.
This is really interesting. It's got a different look to it again. Your one tree that's far off to the left, as I said before on somebody else's, don't put a tree riding the border, lean it in a little bit. I like the way that you took and added the green pine tree in the foreground. That kind of moved the color in the background. Your colors are a little bit more grayed down, which is fine. I like the handling of the pines that you did. This is kind of really different. It's kind of fun. And you added more water streams to the foreground.
Yeah, I'm always adding stuff.
But it's nice. I like the way you did it. It holds together. The only thing that is a big criticism is that yellow-green pine that's in the lower left. I would have used that color on the ground in the mid-ground to move that color around so it's not isolated. But this has a very nice, natural, free look to it. I really like it.
Thank you.
It works well. It is something that the interpretation of the subject matter is really quite different than other people have done, which is always nice to see. I like the way you handled the branches in the pine trees. A lot of people have a tendency of putting branches in too straight, or they're making them look like they're rubber. And you have different movements of the branches jutting in different directions, which makes them look more natural.
Thank you.
Nice job.
Thanks.
Go to your next one if we can. This is fun too. You do fun paintings.
Thanks.
I like the way that you spattered that color throughout the painting. It just kind of gives you a feeling of looseness to it. The darkness of your trunks are a little bit too equal from left side of the river to the right side or the waterway. You could have lightened the ones on the right side a little bit more, not too much. You started to, or you did on the far right, which is good. I like the airiness of it and the casualness of it. It's very fantasy feeling. The only big thing that bothers me is that I see no reflection of the trees in the water coming down on that little inlet on the right side.
Okay.
You have them in the foreground on the left, but nothing on the right. Do you see that?
Yes, I see that.
And everything else is fine. It has a very nice dark kind of fantasy feeling to it. Actually, the dots of colors that you sprinkle through there kind of remind me of um, bugs up in Alaska that were attacking us. Uh, they were getting in our nose and our mouth and our ears. We were there in late August, early September. But this kind of reminds me of just kind of a fun exercise. But if you put those reflections into the water, that's about the only thing that I would do.
Okay, thank you.
I like the casualness of it. You have hard edges, you have soft edges. You allowed the trees just to fall away on the upper right-hand side, and you added branches where they were needed, and you allowed them to go in and out of the areas without showing everything. And you left things elusive. That's a good painting.
Well, thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Very nice. Do you have anything you don't like about it?
Well, what I was really trying to do in the lower right foreground, I'm experimenting with granulation.
Yeah, with
the granulation. Yeah.
With the heavier colors that have metal in them as opposed to the ones that are earthy.
Yeah, like
they'll have that separation.
The Primatech from Daniel Smith are all, they have granulation.
Yes, Daniel Smith has some really fun, interesting colors that you can do that with. Some of the name brands don't have as much of that.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. So I used a really textured tape paper called Moulin du Roi from Canson.
Yep. The paper does help on the texture because it helps the heavier paints to float to the bottom.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your.
Very nice though. Very nice in handling the trees and everything. Very good.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to go on. Nancy, man, are you there? Nancy?
No, my name's Linda, but that's my painting.
Oh, sorry, Linda.
Okay, sorry about that. I like the light airiness of it. I like the crisscrossing patterns of what appears to be cast shadows throughout the foreground, both sides. You have a very nice soft touch and airiness to it. I don't know how we got Nancy on here. It's Linda. Sorry about that.
No problem.
And you can't blame it on margaritas. I didn't have any.
We can't blame it on margaritas because my wife wasn't drinking. There's only one large criticism I have of what you've got down, which is easily corrected. The front tree, as it goes up towards the top of the picture, I think you should run some cast shadows across it to tone it down to bring the eye back down to the ground a little bit easier. The rest of the painting, I like the way you handled it. It's very nice and casual. It's light and airy, which I'm amazed at what you folks came up with. Really nice. What don't you like about the painting, Linda?
Well, I think I overworked the foreground on the right, and I didn't care for the way the blue-green trees in the background kind of, in my eyes, clashed with the yellow-green in the front. So I went back and tried to add some yellow-green up there. And I was thinking the tree was actually too dark. The foreground tree, I was thinking it was actually too dark. It would have been nice to continue the lighter part of it all the way down.
I think it's very nice. I have a feeling of a lighter, brighter day. And when you have a little bit of a breeze blowing, you have that little bit of sparkle in the woods with the branches waving back and forth. And this is the the type of day that I feel like it is right now. I think the painting is very nice. The only thing is I would tone down that upper part of that larger tree in the foreground just a little bit, give it a little bit of cast shadow from an outside source or from above. It doesn't have to make sense. but I do like.
You mean up where the trunk is light, the top?
Yeah, yeah. Give it a
quarter or
little bit of
whatever.
cast shadow up there because the warmer color is attracting my eye too quickly up there. Because warm
Okay.
colors will come forward. But I find that this has a very nice, light, airy look to it. I was looking at it last night because I tried to do a preview of most of these so that I got a feeling for what was going on. But again, it's a different scene. It's a different way of lighting the subject, different interpretation. But I like the way that it's handled with the bluish green off to the left hand side of the trees with a little bit of that warmth waving dappled through. I think it works rather well.
Oh, thank you.
I've been through the woods on many a days like that up there, and it's just a nice, free, soft feeling.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Let's go on to the next one you got. Okay.
Sorry, Nancy again.
Well,
Yeah, that's
sorry.
okay. I'd rather remain anonymous, so that's good.
No, you don't need to remain anonymous. Okay, we have a rainy day, I'm assuming.
Right.
The flesh on the person showing should have been toned down a little bit.
Yeah.
Since it's a little bit on the gray side. As the umbrella comes down and around, it seems a little bit too flat. It could have been a little bit more value as it drops down towards the woman.
On the right side or the left side?
The right side.
Okay.
And you could have shown a cast shadow off the side of the woman or out of the back of the woman a little bit more to show a direction of light. Let me see. That's the set. Yeah. I'm looking for the light source and I get a little confused. It's coming from the upper left, I'm assuming.
Right.
So you could have shown a little bit more shadow on the person. And the legs are fine as far as value goes, but her left side of her upper torso could have been in shadow just a little bit more, even though if it wasn't, just to tone it down so it doesn't look so flat.
Okay.
You tackled a hard subject. Wasn't easy to do, and that horizontal line that goes through the back there, you need to soften a little bit. I don't know what was in the back, whether it was building or.
Yeah, it was supposed to be a very distant in the rain, in the dark.
All right.
Building.
Okay. But just be conscious.
Suggestion of buildings, not even building.
All right.
Looks like she's out in the middle of a huge parking lot.
Yeah, it does. But you can show a softness to some of your edges that are off to her right hand side a little bit more once you tone that flesh down and so forth. Be very conscious of your edges. Only you want to keep an idea of that no more than 1/3 of any edge should be sharp or hard.
Okay.
Okay. And the rest of it will be more soft at that point. So that way it shows a little bit more form, because things that are going away from you will be softer, things that are coming towards you will be a little bit sharper.
Right.
But not bad. That you tackled a difficult subject and you did pretty good with it.
Thank you.
Okay. Is that it?
That's it.
All right. Let's get back to the folks.
Well, no, let's finish the slideshow.
Okay.
So on March 20th, Dale's going to be having a Watercolor Escape Saturday, and that's at noon Central Time, so that means it'll be 11 your time. And here's where you look. You go to Observer, Artist, Watercolorist, Dale L. Popovich, and you can watch him do a demo. And we're going to have a newsletter that's coming out. We're restructuring his newsletter, and it's going to give more tips, and that one's going to be on values, and the painting will also be on values. So make sure you go check that out if you're on Facebook. And once again, he's going to be at Brown County Art Gallery in Nashville, and that's going to be on July 17th and 18th. It's a Friday and Saturday.
Yes, Friday or no Saturday and Sunday.
And it's going to be 2 full days, and he said you'll do 4 paintings in that time.
I will also give you a small lecture demonstration on linear perspective to start the workshop.
And you're going to be painting rural Midwest in watercolor. And then if you want to have a most amazing autumn vacation, you can head up north to the top of Wisconsin where we have our cabin. And Dillman's, I don't know if you've ever been to Dillman's, they have 34 artists each year giving workshops on any kind of medium you can imagine. And before pre-COVID, it was like going to Disneyland for adults. They have cabins there. They're on a peninsula on a lake, and it's probably one of the best workshops Dale does. And he's going to be doing watercolor inspirations of the Great North Woods. So you'll be painting all seasons?
Yep, all 4 seasons.
And that's going to be a 4-day workshop.
So you'll be doing 8 complete paintings.
And they plan your whole day out if you want. They've got cabins there, and they've got condos and all kinds of places you can stay at. And then at night, if you want to have a fire pit party, you want to have s'mores.
Or you go out to restaurants for dinner. There's a casino nearby. You can lose some of your money.
And the autumn colors are just breathtaking. Okay, now.
Okay.
Let me.
Do you want to get the camera on me then?
Yeah. Okay. And just let me.
Hang on a minute, folks. Okay, there we are. All right, I got the bowl here. I got all the names in them. And I'm going to pull out one right now to see who wins the... I'm not looking, actually. Just want to pull out one. There we go. That's one. So let's see who won the painting. Ron, you won the painting.
Oh, I'll be okay.
So this is the painting that you won. Okay.
Hey, great. Well, I couldn't do it, but
now you have a sample of it.
That's great.
Yeah, Ron, I'll call you up after the workshop and get your mailing address.
Okay, that's fine.
I will mail that out Monday to you.
Great.
So expect a package, depending on how the post office has been operating this winter, which has not been that great. It should be within a week.
Great. That's terrific. Well, thank you. That makes everything really great.
Is there any other questions that anybody has at this point?
I want to ask whether you paint plein air or not.
I don't do it that often. Don't have enough time usually in most cases. If I'm up in the North Woods, I've been working on and around our log cabin that we're going to retire to. When I do go out, I limit my color to 3 to 4 tubes. I take 3 brushes with me, a gallon of water, and you have to go out either from 10 o'clock to 2 o'clock where the sun doesn't move all that much. Usually 11 to 1 is the best. Otherwise you're chasing the light. I take my phone with me to take a picture of it to remind myself what I started off painting. Usually plein air is you're doing sketches outside. They're really not finished paintings. And anybody that tells you differently is kidding themselves, because you're really sketching an idea in, I would say, an hour to an hour and a half, and then bring it back to the studio and finish it. I did a plein air. I hadn't done plein air in probably 20 years until about 3-4 years ago, because I'm mostly studio working. But they asked me, the Indiana Historical Museum asked me to do one down at T.C. Steele's house. And with a little bit of shaking in my limbs, because I hadn't done plein air in a while, I said I committed to it, and I they wanted me to paint the trees on his property. And so I chose one beautiful tree that actually TC Steele painted out in front of his house. And it came out really quite well. I was kind of surprised and happy with it. But when you're doing plein air, there's a lot of things going on. You have bugs, you have the wind, you have the rain, you have the sun moving, and you got to get accustomed to that, which I can fairly easily. But in controlled circumstances in the studio, you can always do a better painting without a doubt, because you don't have people roaming around you asking questions and so forth. I've painted down a lot in downtown Chicago in the Loop in the past, and you have a lot of people asking you silly questions sometimes, like, what are you painting? And there was one time I was in the courtyard of the Wrigley building, and my painting was not coming out the way I wanted, so I wiped it off. I was doing oils at the time, and I started painting a woodland scene, and I was amazed at how many people come up, stand behind you, and they're looking around like, what are you painting? I was painting something from my head. And I says, I'm just painting from my head at this point. But plein air painting can be interesting. I don't call myself a plein air painter by any means, but I do like to go out, and I'm looking forward to when we retire up north of traveling out with my equipment and doing some more plein air painting. But I always try to keep it simple. Not a lot of colors, not a lot, but I take extra paper and tape with me, and off I go. Any other questions at all?
Yeah, Dale, I'm having difficulty searching for registration for the Brown County workshop. Why am I not pulling it up?
They may not have listed it yet. I would call there and talk to Jeannie.
Yeah, Jeannie Bennett is at the gallery Monday through Friday. She can put you on the list.
Okay, so that's the only way you can sign up.
Right now, yes, they probably don't have it up and ready, because it was,
Okay.
I think, a week and a half or 2 weeks ago, we sent them the final write-up of the workshop.
Okay.
They have, it's a wonderful area alongside the main gallery that I'm in that is large, it's well lit.
It's safe.
It's safe. We were wearing masks last year and keeping social distancing. It's a large room. And I only had 6 students, and we could easily fit 12.
Yeah.
Gail, is this at the Brown County Artists Guild or at the Brown County Museum? Brown County
Gallery.
It's
Gallery.
it's the gallery. It's one
Artist Way.
artist way. It's kind of up on the hill and east of downtown.
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
They just enlarged the whole building, and they did
Yeah.
a phenomenal job. I've been part of their Indiana Heritage Art Show for 15 or 16 years now, which I'm always very honored to get into, because it's predominantly an oil painters show.
Yeah.
And there's 4 or 5 us watercolors that enter and get in, but it's probably one of the finest shows that I've participated in as far as the quality and of the artwork. And they always hire wonderful judges that are traditional in training.
Okay.
Dale,
Yes.
I had asked you about when I took photographs of my 2 paintings, and the one I did following your demo. I think they were both on 300-pound paper, but
Yeah.
when I did the waterfall, it seemed like it was so grainy. Was it I just didn't use enough water to fill in the holes, or?
Getting used to putting down enough watercolor. As I build up my watercolors, I'm using less water in most cases. Sometimes I'll use more, but at the beginning, I'm with a lot of washes and so forth. I'm using a lot more water, and I start building up the layers. I've been told by other watercolors, my watercolors don't look like the ordinary watercolors. Okay, the watercolors that was it Ron that you handed in?
Yeah.
Trees, and you've been influenced by Tony Couch and so forth.
Yeah.
They were Tony Couch is a very traditional watercolorist in the handling of the watercolor. Very light, airy washes and so forth, which is something that I used to do. I have changed over the years, and I've been told that my watercolors don't always look like traditional watercolors. Well, they don't. And everybody handle things differently, but I handle my watercolor more heavily as I move through the painting than other watercolorists do. So it's something that I tell my students to be more aggressive just to see what happens. So you need to use more watercolor. This is the painting I did for. This was the rough I did.
See, there you are.
Yeah, I did for the Lakeland Art League, and this is probably about 8 by 10. Okay, and I wanted to work out a few things in my head, not only value-wise but color-wise, and I'm always thinking different ways and so forth with different things. I could have handled it differently or whatever, but my watercolors are a little bit more heavily applied watercolor in many cases. Hand me the Christmas card and the one behind it. I did a Christmas card for my wife up at the log cabin.
I think you showed this last time.
Did I show this last time? I forget whether I did or not. Did I show this last time?
No.
Yes.
No.
Was it,
No.
yes,
I didn't
no,
see
no. I teach a number of different groups during the week and so forth. This was a Christmas card I did for my wife, if you can see that. It was light, airy. There's figures way back there. That's supposed to be me and my wife. I painted us thinner, so we look good.
And younger.
And younger. We're younger. So this was an interpretation of a summer scene I took in the Upper Peninsula on a dirt road. Okay? But I made it into a winter scene. This was the actual scene, if you could see it.
Oh my
So
goodness.
what I did, and it's a matter of changing color, temperature, and value. And I used the same basic composition and I just made it into a snow scene. You have to go on past experience. It's really, your imagination is part of your past experience. So the more I put in my head, the more I get out.
Can you put them side by side?
Yes.
Thank you.
Can you see that?
Yeah.
Yeah. I always make my wife a birthday card and a Christmas card. And I was off in the corner of a log cabin. I told her to stay on the other side so she didn't see the Christmas card. But I was looking at this reference that I painted later, but I painted this first before I even painted this one. But it's a matter of value.
Yeah.
And color. But I'm always telling the students, value is the most important thing that you have to understand in a painting, because if your values are not right, and that's getting the drawing done first right, if the values aren't strong enough or dark enough or light enough, you could put all the color in the world on it and it's still not going to be right. So get the value right, and you can change the color. You can make things out of something else, which is important. How to interpret that color is very important, but you can interchange things. You don't always have to be correct in color, but you have to be correct in value at all times.
Yeah.
Any other questions? I hope you enjoyed the 2 half-day workshops.
Oh my, yes.
Yeah.
Very
Thank
It
you.
was wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Also,
Yeah.
I want to let you know, because he won't sell himself. His next palette and chisel class is coming up. That's Zoom. So that's starting on March 18th and it ends on April 15th. And then after that, there's the April 22nd to May 20th.
How do we find out about that palette and Zoom class?
I will I'm going to send you guys a little thank you letter, and I will
Okay.
put links in that for that.
All of this is on your website, isn't it, Dale?
Yeah.
Yes, it should be.
Yeah.
But we will send you the links to that anyways. But I
Yeah.
just have to tell you, I'm always marveled at the variety of artwork that different people do, and you may not think it's good, but I'm looking at it from a different angle. There's parts and pieces that might be good, but it's the variety that I really enjoy looking at because everybody's different. Everybody does things differently. And you all came up with a different idea of what I painted, except for Ron, which I still want to see one. Um, but it's a good thing that people do paint differently because if we did everything the same way, have a boring world. I did this with my students for years when I was teaching at the American Academy of Art. I'd give them assignment, and it was variation of a theme, and I would give them the theme. They had to come up with 48 ideas, which I would pick 12. And these, of course, 18, 19-year-olds, 48 ideas. It's like, yes, 48 ideas. And I'm going to pick 12 of the best, and you're going to do them in different ways. But I had 35 people in class. And take 35 times 48, and I'm looking at all these ideas, and I was amazed, even with the young people, would come up with this variety of that idea. And I gave them, one year I gave them a subject matter of anything on Williamsburg, Virginia. And they all looked at you with this, deer in the headlight look. Williamsburg, Virginia, what's that? I says, there are libraries. Go to the library. And there was no internet at that time, thank God. But they all went to the library, they researched it, they researched different facets of it, and I was amazed. I would always give them a little bit of education in U.S. history in one way or another through art because it's not taught long enough, well enough, especially nowadays.
Now, if you can work in civics and economics, you'll have a good package.
There you go. But I was always telling them how to conduct their business before they left my class. And I taught a first year and a second year class. And I says, you got to write thank you notes. You just don't do this, do that. Write a thank you note that's personalized for the interview. Take that time because a thank you note will not go in a circular file. It will be registered. And this is how you get jobs eventually down the line. And how to do your billing, how to do your taxes became very important as time went on. So I was trying to teach all angles of before they left, and it was amazing on how many of the students that I pushed that didn't want to be pushed that thank me later on. And I was that's probably the best result I got out of these young people is that they came back and thank you. Even at graduation, I had one young lady come up to me dragging her parents saying, this is the instructor that kicked my ass all the way through the course. But, there's times that you have to do that. There's times that you have to give them discipline and structure, and other times you give them the freedom. But this is what I'm always telling the students, experiment with different things. If it doesn't work, try something different. And I've ruined miles of watercolor paper. And they're in landfill, most of it, but that's how you grow. So it's like practicing the violin, piano, dance, whatever. It doesn't come off your fingertips like magic. If it did, everybody'd be doing it and doing it well.
Yeah.
But I've enjoyed all of you thoroughly. It's been wonderful.
Thank you.
Dale, I'd just like for the group to recognize that Rachel Lattimore put this together. And it's the first time the Watercolor Society has ever done a virtual workshop with paid participants. And Rachel did a magnificent job of not only putting this together, but choosing you, Dale. And we exceeded our expectation on enrollment. And it was a very positive experience. And so I want to not only thank you, Dale, but I want the group to recognize the work that Rachel did to put this together. So she's leading the charge to do the virtual workshops, which I think we're going to be. I think we'll do more of them. I think it's one of the takeaways.
That was great. Yes.
Rachel, we were in communication with Rachel off and on. I thought she did a good job, and I thought everybody else did a good job that participated. The Zoom that has taken over with the COVID actually has pushed us ahead 5 years in our thoughts.
And in our personal business.
Yeah, our personal business has blossomed way beyond what we thought, and now we're looking, when we retire, of putting up a tower up at our log cabin to continue Zoom classes.
Great.
I wonder what you were going to do up there in the woods.
We're gonna. There's a. I grew up in the North Woods. I was a year old when my parents went up to the North Woods. The doctor wanted to have my father take us to the North Woods. My mother was ill with really bad colitis, so he said take her to a place to where she doesn't have to take care of the kids, no cooking, whatever. So we found my dad found a resort at the Sportsman Show down in Chicago, and this guy was hawking his brother's resort. We got up there, and I was a year old. It was a 12-hour ride back then because there's no highways. And there were bats in the cottage, and there was this, there was that. My mother, we moved to another cottage from what I was told. But about 4 years down the line, my dad bought property down the lake, and 200 feet, it was $4 or $5 a foot. Now, I could tell you it's way over $1,000 a foot now. But he bought property down the lake 200 feet. My mom fell in love with the cabin or the house next door that this carpenter was building. And my dad went over to talk to him, and he wouldn't even talk to my dad. He didn't want to sell the property in the house. That was in the spring of 58. In the fall of 58, my dad says, let me go talk to him again. So my dad came up with an idea. How about if we trade deeds and I buy the house? Well, handshake, $25 down, it was done. So my parents had 1,000 square foot house on a nice lake, and we had it for 50 years. So we ended up selling it, unfortunately, but that's another story. But we ended up buying a log cabin in the woods, which is less property tax than being on the lake by a long shot. So if you're retiring, you want less taxes.
But they have a great artist community, several artist communities up there. And I also just want to reiterate, Rachel was wonderful working with.
Yes.
Everything just fell right into place with her. And then you'll notice I sent out an email to the leadership of your group on what we've learned on how to Zoom. So
Marianne.
Camera equipment. Some of you weren't online yet. We figured out the mic problem. It was that I had the mic plugged into an USB port because it had more ports on it. And it was plugged into electricity, but the mic must suck a ton of energy. Plus there was a lot of cable. So it's plugged back into my laptop. And you guys...
I received that list and I really appreciate it.
You bet.
Thank you a lot for sharing.
Yeah,
That's not always the case. People aren't always willing to share. And
well, we do share all our fishing spots where a lot of people don't up north.
But yeah, no, it's, I mean, that's what I like about artists is we all help each other.
Yeah, that's true. It's a characteristic.
And believe me, if I learn something else out, I'll definitely write you guys. But
thank you very much.
Dale,
I think you can expect, the participants can expect to get 3 or 4 questionnaire evaluation from this experience so that we can grow as we go.
Yeah, it's always very important to get feedback on what you're doing from fellow artists. I get feedback from Mary Lee all the time. She'll come down, and if she's standing at the stairs to my studio and I hear a ooh in the background, I know I'm at the right spot. And if I hear silence, I know she's got something to say. And I do the same thing with her work because she designs logos and does a lot of marketing and stuff, and I will make comments on that. So we feed off of one another.
Yeah, he always pulls me off the ceiling when I'm in that chaos mode, when I'm like, oh my goodness, I don't think I can design another great logo.
Yeah,
he pulls me off the ceiling and talks me down.
Yeah.
But we do help one another.
And I would really greatly appreciate if you guys could just write a nice little testimonial on this workshop, if you so inclined, and then email
Okay.
it to Dale or me.
Okay. Yeah,
Dale, I have a question.
I'm looking for the person asking. Oh, there you are. Okay.
Um, do you have a source that I have a lot of trouble with value and figuring out where my light's coming from and that sort of thing?
Well, let me show you one thing that I do. Let me grab it. Whoops.
Well, Dale's gone, and Rose, I was just thinking maybe he would be great for one of our workshop teachers.
Yes. I think we'll add him to the list.
I would appreciate that. I love working with people. This is a value chart that I have the students make.
Yeah, I have.
This is one my wife made, and what you can do with this is I punched holes in it, and you can look through it, you know, like this, to see the values and identify whether it's a dark, a mid-tone, or a light. And what I have it divided up from black to white, and then I have the 9 values in between. There's 3 darks, 3 mid-tones, and 3 lights. And what I have the students understand is anything that's in the light is either a mid-tone or a light, okay? Because form diminishes in the shadow and you don't see a lot of form to it. So what happens is that values minimize when it gets dark out. We don't see things like that. But in the light, you see more value. So I usually have the students look at their photographs. They'll put it, if I had a photograph here, you would take and put it over the photograph so that you can see what value it falls in. Is it a light, a mid-tone, or a dark? So it helps you identify it. After a while, the students don't need it because they can identify it from squinting down. So you always squint your eyes down, or if people with glasses, you take them off, is usually the best. And you can see the value better because it simplifies. Then you open your eyes for the color. So usually I have the students make a value chart in pencil. I had this one printed out from my wife, so I can have it readily available to the students. But what I do is I use an ebony pencil, and I start off very lightly toning the paper with pencil. Start off with the dark and go back and forth until I get a 10% change in each with no line in between. And you can see that I have it labeled. But so when you look down at it or look up at it, it flows with no interruption.
And I think we're going to have a PDF of this in the newsletter. We're still narrowing down the information we're putting in it.
But if you're having problems, let's say you're working with a photograph, take the photograph, put it 6-7 feet away from you, tape it to a wall. Then as you progress through the painting, bring it another foot or 2 closer to you, because we're all influenced by detail. Detail, they think it's the most wonderful thing we can do. Well, the detail doesn't help anything until the very end, and you only put it on and around your focal point. But you bring the photograph closer to you as you progress through the painting, and then you can understand where you want your focal point and how much of it to put in. The rest of it just falls away. So the painting that I did here has a bit of a focal point right in here. Now, you don't always need a focal point, but it makes a little bit stronger painting. You could have points of interest, which is more points of interest in this painting, to lead the eye, but you want the overall look of the pattern of lights and darks first. Get that imprint of what is happening in here and then build on it. When I was a student, I was always trying to put the highlights on the bolts on the battleship before I painted the battleship. So try to keep things simple at the beginning and then build up to what you need to look at later.
Dale, I tried that HB pencil and it seemed to smear all over the place. So I went back to my 2H.
She left-handed?
Are you left-handed?
No, I'm right-handed.
Okay, left-handed people smear a lot.
Left-handed.
Well, and I couldn't find my eraser of the. Yeah,
I use a 2B pencil or higher. Sometimes I'll use a 4B. I don't put a lot of pencil work on the paper. All the drawing is done with my brush. The more pencil work you put on the paper, the more you're tinting a drawing and not painting it. So I really don't do a lot of drawing unless it's a portrait or something that's architectural that somebody's hired me to do. I don't do a lot of drawing on the paper.
Okay.
The big masses down and some of the secondary things, and detail is not drawn in on the paper. But I will tell you that the 2H pencil or an H pencil is a hard lead, and it can damage the watercolor paper. It can cut the fibers. And you end
I did it lightly, but
okay.
But yeah.
Any
May
other
I ask a question?
Yeah.
It's Susan. It's for everybody. I would like to go to the first brush of spring and New Harmony. Is there anyone else doing that?
Nobody?
Oh, well, just thought I'd ask.
You know, I made my value chart using neutral tint watercolor, and it worked out really well.
Yeah. Except that neutral tint, did you get it dark enough for the black?
I finally did, yes.
Okay.
I mean, I did like 12, I don't remember, 10 or 12 different washes and just kept building them up.
Yeah.
And yet I finally felt like I got it dark enough.
Yeah, I haven't used neutral tint in 25 years. I would use a Payne's gray once in a while when I'm using limited color, like 2 colors. Then you can gray things down. But I never use Payne's gray or neutral tint painting full color. I just feel I can cross mix and get a nice gray, whatever color I want it to be.
Well, I was just using it for the value chart.
Yeah, the value, yeah, that's fine for the value chart. We used to have to paint them when I was in school from black to white by adding a little bit of white to the black or a little bit of black to the white and get that progression of 10%, which I did it like 6 times to get it right.
Yeah.
I was a terrible art student at the beginning.
Dale, you
Yes.
know that on the iPhone, if you take a picture of the painting you're doing on the iPhone and put it in edit mode, you can go to your value chart.
Oh yes, yeah. You can. I can change the intensity, the color, the warmth, the coolness of it, contrast. There's all sorts of neat things you can do on the iPhone or the iPad. Anybody else? Any questions at all? We're all looking up over our glasses, most of us. It's kind of funny. We're all that age.
So you're going to have in the Watercolor Society of Indiana's meeting is going to be in March.
March 21st, and it'll be a Zoom.
And that's going to be coming out in an email to Dale?
It'll come out the way it comes out to every other member.
Okay.
Which means I don't have a clue. I'm finalizing the contract for our new executive director. And there are a lot of things that I don't know yet about, just the whole thing about the March 21st meeting causes me to quake. Because first program fell through, second program fell through. So anyway, I don't know the answer to a lot of this. A lot of it's going to depend on conversations I have with the new executive director in the next week or so.
Okay.
I feel like that she's going to take over the technology in a really fast fashion, and she'll be sending everybody in the membership the Zoom connection for that meeting. And I will introduce her and she will speak at that meeting. So I really encourage everybody to attend because I think you're going to be really interested in meeting this new person. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, do you get email? You get the newsletter?
I get the newsletter when Nancy was sending it out.
We just sent a newsletter out. When was that? Was it January? I think we sent a newsletter out.
Could have been one in January.
January, Linda, and then
Yeah.
we have another one sometime this spring. I can't remember the date of it, and that's all packed, so I can't even go get it. So we'll have another newsletter, but we will be in touch.
Okay.
And we're rebuilding our database. So that's a challenge too. It's not one that I have accepted, but someone else has. That's a good thing. So we're rebuilding our database for accuracy. So things are looking up.
Good.
I know, you got to do it. You got to do it. I mean, we're working on Dale's email list all the time.
Yeah. Well, we're actually changing our entire software package.
Ew.
Yeah, because we found a company called Wild Apricot, and it will integrate all of our technology, and we're really excited about it. But the transition's going to be interesting, you know.
Good.
So yeah.
Well, I want to thank everybody again for attending and for having me do the workshop for you.
Sure.
It's always been something a little bit different, and these times are challenging anyways. We're trying to adapt to it. So if you have any questions in the future, just yell, please.
Dale,
Yes.
did I understand correctly that we will all be receiving your regular newsletter now?
Yes, you will. Unless
On
you
your
don't.
mailing list?
Yes, unless you don't want to be on his mailing list.
Good. I want
You'll
you.
know what I'm doing some of the time.
Yeah, it's going to be coming out at the beginning of March.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right.
Wonderful.
Oh, sharing of your time. Yes.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Very appreciative.
Thank you.
See you on Thursday, Pat.
Enjoyed it.
Yeah,
Right.
it was great fun. Thank you so much.
Okay. Bye-bye.
All right. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.